Welcome to the Pitcher Nail Down. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Nick Tasso at the Inefficient 2. Taking a look at pitching on tonight's 13-game slate for DraftKings and FanDuel, and there's definitely some strong options and a pretty good, wide variety of pricing as well.
Oh, absolutely. I really like this slate a lot. There's a lot of things you can do with it in terms of pitching, but you might have to dig deep down to save some salary because I'm sure there's a lot of bats people want to roster tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a Coors game, which is always throws a wrench into your process, so that is something to mention.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even though there are a lot of options, I think this might be one of the toughest roster constructions in a long time.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different ways you can go. First one here, you get the Nationals and Phillies. Tanner Roark versus Jake Thompson. Nationals minus 207 favorites there on the road. Tanner Roark reasonably priced. He's obviously a guy who does have some regression coming, and it might have been shown over the last two starts or so. But I don't mind him here for his price tag against one of the weaker offenses in the league. And I think because the Coors game, he fits as a reasonable SP2 option or even a reasonable cash game guy on FanDuel if you are looking to kind of go with a more heavy bats approach lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely see that. I have a little more hesitation than you just because it is Tanner Roark and the ballpark might not benefit him. So I'm a little nervous about playing him, but I definitely don't have an issue with it. It's 8,600 on DraftKings, so you can kind of fit nicely as an SP2. And like you said, you're going to need to save some salary tonight. You really can't roster two of the top guys.
No, he definitely can. I mean, he really does come in as one of the better values. And as you mentioned, I mean, obviously moving to Philly is definitely a ballpark downgrade. But everything kind of checks out okay. I mean, he may give up a few earned runs or so, but I don't think that blow-up potential is really there for him.
No, absolutely. Still a guy with an ERA under 3. He just doesn't really translate it all too much to DFS purposes, but I definitely think against the Phillies, he has a good chance to do so.
Yeah, definitely. And on the other side, Jake Thompson's not a guy who I'm looking to use. Really hasn't shown much in his few starts there. And against this Nationals offense that is clicking up top, it's kind of an easy stay away.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake Thompson almost has a 10 ERA, so I'm staying far away from him.
Blue Jays and Orioles next year. Marco Estrada versus Wade Miley. This one's kind of easy for me. Wade Miley against this Blue Jays offense, kind of an easy fade, especially in that ballpark. And Marco Estrada as well. I mean, he's pitched well this season, but obviously you look at his numbers and his ERA, it doesn't really quite match up. I mean, over a 4 Sierra, still pretty home run prone if you go back to last year. It's just kind of a stay away against this Orioles offense.
Yeah, Miley for me is definitely a stay away. I could consider Estrada maybe in GPP just because there's a little bit of strikeout upside against the Orioles, but it's really not something I want to do, even though his price tag is pretty low. So I'll probably stay away from both these guys.
Red Sox and Rays next year, Rick Porcello versus Matt Andriese. And Rick Porcello obviously has dominated the Rays this season, has dominated in Fenway Park. For me, I mean, he's a bit overpriced, and I think in consideration to the other arms tonight, it just seems like why don't I just kind of spend up to an Arrieta or Fernandez when they're that close?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think Purcell is in a good spot here, but when you have him up top, only 1,000 or so away from the top guys who are in pretty good matchups, it's a no-brainer. Just go with those guys.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even though the Rays have struggled and the strikeout rate's high, it just seems like, I'll take a little bit of safety and a little bit more upside with some of those other guys there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at the Rays, they're more of an older professional team, so they've seen him a couple times now. Seeing guys a few times kind of gets them knowing what he's going to throw. So they could have a decent game, but it's still the Rays.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you look at Andriese on the other side, not a guy who I'm looking to use against this Red Sox offense that's been coming around.
Yeah, and you look at Andriese, he's really underperformed lately. At the start, he was good, but now he's just kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, definitely. Twins and Indians next year, Trevor Bauer versus Hector Santiago. And even though Trevor Bauer is obviously taking out Twins offense that's boomer or bust, I don't feel quite comfortable with him in GPPs. And I think for the price, I kind of rather lean other options. And he's also, I mean, the Twins have had his number this year, so I'm just kind of staying away.
Oh, absolutely. He's looked pretty bad against them the last two starts, so I'm definitely staying away from Bauer in this matchup, even though it is in Indians' home field. I'm not a big fan of him. His price tag's okay, but on this slate, I really you don't really want to pay that much for him.
No, I don't think so. And for him, I mean, he had a decent start against Toronto, but outside of that, I mean, it's been very up and down. I mean, the price tag makes it consider, makes you kind of take a look. But I think the deeper you look, you just go, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think he's fine for GPPs, but I want to have a lot of exposure to him.
Yeah, and Santiago on the other side, he's a guy I'm not really looking to use. Even though the Indians against lefties hasn't really panned out, and they're kind of more middle of the road, I'm still just kind of looking at Hector Santiago as a guy who I don't see a ton of upside from.
No, absolutely. Look at his last few starts, especially the time that he's had with the Twins. He's just been really bad, so it's an easy stay away for me.
White Sox and Tigers next year, Matt Boyd versus James Shields. Obviously, I think James Shields is going to present the opportunity for another stacking option for the Tigers. A lot of the Tigers' bats, I mean, have good success off Shields, and I think that's one of the more, easy ones to stay away from. I think even an easier stay away than Coors at this point.
Yeah, Shields is pretty bad. His last time was okay, but that was against the Phillies. But other than that, you always just want to stack against James Shields.
Yeah, definitely do. And Matt Boyd on the other side, I mean, he's a guy who's had a couple decent starts, but I think for the price, I mean, you can make a case for him in GPPs. But I don't think I can really roster him. He's had a couple good starts in a row against some decent offenses. Um, White Sox, you can make a case, but I think it's kind of high risk, high reward.
No, I definitely agree with you there. I like him a decent amount on the slate, but it's definitely a lot of risk involved. Boyd's looked pretty good over his last few starts, holding opponents, not scoring many runs. So I definitely like that there. And he does have some sort of strikeout upside. And you look at this White Sox lineup, and outside of really guys like Abreu, Melky Cabrera, and even Todd Frazier, there's really not too many guys who could do some damage against Boyd.
No, definitely not. And Adam Eaton might be out of the lineup, so that's something that would kind of take away from the top half of that lineup. And as you mentioned, there is some strikeout upside. I mean, you look at the White Sox, 22% strikeout rate against lefties. And probably a decent shot at a win as well if he goes past, 5 or 6 innings there.
Yeah, and Boyd's looked a lot better at home as well. So I like him. I agree with that with you that there's some risk here, but at that price tag, I really don't mind him as an SP2.
Yeah, definitely don't either. Marlins and Mets next year, Jose Fernandez or Rafael Montero. Fernandez on the road, and obviously when he's not been on the road, it's been a little bit more volatile, but I think he's going to be completely fine in this matchup against the Mets, team that he's dominated this season. 26 strikeouts in 19 innings against them this year. In a friendly ballpark still. I mean, Fernandez is easily one of your top cash game or GPP options.
Absolutely. It's really hard to fit him in, especially if you want to go heavy on offense, but I definitely think he's going to be worth it. You look at this Mets offense, and they've really not showed too much lately, and you put Fernandez against them, and you really should have a good time, even though it is away from his home park. But Citi Field isn't like it's a good hitter's park, so I really don't have any issues.
No, and you look, Cespedes sat out yesterday. Neil Walker sat out yesterday. I mean, those two bats are out. I mean, that's a weak lineup. And you got Jay Bruce in the middle of it, but Bruce really hasn't done much since coming over to New York. So, I mean, that would be a lineup that he could easily dominate.
Yeah, absolutely. I hate his price tag, but at the same time, you kind of have to play him. It's almost a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, definitely. And on the other side, I mean, Montero's not a guy who I'm really looking to use. I know this Marlins offense is pretty kind of lackluster without Stanton in the middle of the lineup. But I don't know. 4K, I mean, obviously, it's an SP2. You can make a case for it, but I don't think there's really a ton of upside.
No, absolutely. And you look at Montero too. It should also boost Fernandez, easily get a win, hopefully. So I definitely staying away from Montero, but trying to fit Fernandez in any way possible.
Yeah, definitely am too. Carlos and Brewers next year, Carlos Martinez or Zach Davies. Martinez is an interesting pivot option. A little bit cheaper on DraftKings in consideration to guys like Arrieta and Fernandez. You're saving about 2,000, 2,500, or whoever you're going with. But obviously, this Milwaukee team presents a ton of upside to right-handed pitchers. I mean, 25.4% strikeout rate. We've seen Martinez go in and pitch well in Miller Park and pitch well against the Brewers this year. I like him as kind of a spin-off option in tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably want to use him in cash just because he still has a little volatility to him. But I definitely agree with you. You go as a little contrarian play on GPPs, and you get a little discount, and you could have a really good outing. So I really don't mind him.
No, I don't either. And he should get a win. I mean, Davis on the other side, I'm not really looking to use. Um, you kind of expect the Cardinals to be a bigger favorite, but they're really not. But I'm okay with deploying Martinez and thinking he gets a win and kind of checks off all the boxes.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's looked good over his last few outings. I really don't have any issues playing him.
Yeah. Yeah, and Davies, I mean, Davies is just cheap, but I think he's just kind of a stay away in that ballpark and against this Cardinals offense that hasn't been great, but I think they'll kind of give him a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even think about Davies. Sorry about that. He's just kind of an afterthought at this point, going up against a heavy lefty St. Louis Cardinals lineup.
Yeah. Pirates and Cubs next year, Jake Arrieta versus Stephen Broughton. And Arrieta is another big favorite, another guy you can look at to target. I rank him slightly behind Jose Fernandez a little bit here tonight, but obviously still a top option. Arrieta is a guy who, I mean, walk rate's been a little bit up, but I think against this Pirates offense that hasn't been good against righties. Pittsburgh also has a decent strikeout rate against right-handed pitching. Arrieta has that track record. He'll be another solid guy to target tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. As much as I really do like Fernandez, when it comes down to roster construction, it might be a little bit smarter to go with Arrieta. And he's still in a good matchup. I know Pittsburgh's a little bit better offense, but against righties, that, like you said, they're not that good. So I really could, I really don't have an issue with either Arrieta or Fernandez.
Yeah, I don't either. And you look at what Arrieta's done against the Pirates this year. I mean, 4 starts, 33 strikeouts, is averaging just 200 runs allowed per start. I mean, I kind of expect another outing there, and I think we expect a lot of Cubs run support there against Brault.
Oh, absolutely. You look at Montero and Fernandez likely will get the win, but I definitely think it's more likely that Jake Arrieta will get the win against Brault.
Yeah, I think that's solely just because that Cubs lineup is much better than the Marlins at this point.
Absolutely, and I don't have a lot of faith in Brault going up against a lot of those hitters in the Cubs offense.
No, I don't either. Mariners and Rangers next year. Yu Darvish versus Hisashi Iwakuma. Yu Darvish, obviously a talented arm, one of the higher strikeout rate guys on the slate. Still up over 30% this year. For me, he kind of gets lost. I mean, it's not a perfect matchup against the Mariners. I mean, the Mariners are obviously a top 10 offense against right-handed pitch, and they don't strike out a ton. But I don't usually worry about that with Darvish. I think for me, I just think for the price, I'd rather even kind of spin down to other guys, or I'd rather just kind of go up to Fernandez or Arrieta.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. For me, this entire game's just a stay away. The ballpark factor kind of throws me off here. I don't think Darvish will have a rough outing, but it's not one of those comfortable things you kind of feel like. I think if you want to be contrarian GPPs, you could use them, but cash game, definitely no for me.
Yeah, I'm in cash games either, and I think as you mentioned, I mean for GPPs, he's an interesting swerve off those other guys because you still can save a couple, about 1,000 or 1,500 there. So it is still a drop down option. I just don't quite see that he's going to have a phenomenal start where he gets kind of over 25 DK points and he's pushing 30 like the other guys.
No, absolutely. I mean, in addition to Cano and Cruz, like there's still some other good hitters in there that could really do some damage against him. And if you do want to be contrarian, if you're looking on DraftKings, why not just drop down another 600 to Carlos Martinez, who I feel is in a better spot?
Yeah, I definitely do too. And Iwakuma on the other side has struggled with Texas, has struggled in Texas. He's a guy who that's an easy fade for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Astros and A's next year, Sean Manaea versus Joe Musgrove, and the wheels came off the Joe Musgrove train pretty quickly. You look at his last 2 starts, he has allowed 13 earned runs, 4 homers. I mean, the strikeout rate went down against Pittsburgh and Baltimore, and teams that do strike out quite a bit, which is a little bit of concern. I mean, obviously there still is the blow up potential. Here, because he's cheap, I actually don't mind him as a GPP option still, just because of how bad he's been. I think he's going to get lower ownership. People are going to be off of him. And the A's offense is striking out at kind of a league average rate over the second half, and obviously they're still one of the poorer teams against right-handed pitching.
No, absolutely. I hate saying this for a guy who's had negative DraftKings points in back-to-back games, but I really don't mind him here. I mean, you look at this Oakland offense, and they really don't do much against righties. I know they still have Davis, who has enormous power even against righties, and a few lefties in there, but I think Musgrove may be able to kind of put together a nice little outing. I wish this game was in the Coliseum, but is what it is, and even in Minute Maid, I think he should come away with a decent start.
Yeah, I do too, and I think this is more just because of the slate and because of the price. And we talked about wanting to get some hitters in. He's a possible option for you. That kind of allows you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you there. I mean, he's a lot cheaper than a lot of the guys on this slate, and there is some risk. But at the end of the day, once you get under, say, 10K, almost everyone's going to have some risk.
Yeah, definitely. And you look on the other side. I mean, I like the way Manaeus pitched, and I'm kind of looking at him and I considering it, but I think it's at the end of the day I'm going to get to that point and just probably can't go with him. But I think in the future he's a guy who I'll certainly be looking at more and more, just the way he's been pitching of late. But obviously, I think this is just in the ballpark. I'm going to downgrade him a little bit. I think I kind of rather go with some other options at a similar price.
Yeah, I agree with you there. He did look good last at it, but again, that was in Oakland, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. And I think he definitely is turning things around. He looks a lot better lately, but it's still kind of early to see. And against this lineup with a bunch of lefty mashers, it's just an easy fade for me.
Yeah, I think so too. And the home run potential is certainly there for the Astros, which is always kind of my worry with Medea. I mean, gets a couple guys on in one blast, and he's kind of cooked.
Yeah, absolutely. And since he's a lefty, now you have to worry yourself with Evan Gaddis as well as all the other guys.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely a stay away situation, but an interesting guy to consider in the future.
Yeah, remember when the last time I said that, Tyler Duffy? Oh, he's been awful.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry about that, guys.
Yankees and Royals next here. Dylan G versus Michael Pineda. This game alone is just kind of one I'm just not really looking to get a ton of exposure to, pitching and hitting wise. Good field there in Kauffman Stadium. Obviously, Pineda, pretty cheap guy, but a guy who really just can't rely on. I mean, he's had a couple big games, but as far as going up against this Royals offense, that's kind of been a little bit better of late. I'm staying away.
Yeah, cash games, I definitely agree with you there. I think he's okay for GPPs. I wouldn't really have too much exposure to him just because he still has issues with his fly ball rate. But in this ballpark, we've seen starters kind of do well who have a high fly ball rate outside of Chris Young. But you look at Ian Kennedy, and he sometimes pitches well there. So I think the potential is there. It's just not something that I probably want to do, but I definitely think he's okay for GPPs if you're that kind of crazy person.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, in terms of pricing, I think you're probably looking more DraftKings, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't consider him on FanDuel.
Yeah, a little overpriced there on FanDuel. And G on the other side, one of the poorer pitchers on the slate. And the Yankees' offense really hasn't been that bad. I mean, they laid a dud against Gossman yesterday, but overall, I mean, they've actually been pretty solid of late.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely not playing G. He's very underwhelming.
Yeah. Dodgers and Rockies next here. John Gravers, Kenta Maeda, and both these guys obviously priced down because of cores, but Kenta Maeda at 6,500 has me kind of considering him, even though it's in cores. And obviously we've seen cores this year, and it hasn't always been the most successful for hitters at times. And you look at Maeda, I mean, he's pitched there twice already, or has pitched there 3 times and has a 1.45 ERA. So has allowed just 1 earned run, is averaging over a strikeout per inning. Kind of surprising, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like you could roll the dice again. Obviously, still 4 times is kind of risky when you're getting up there. You're pushing your luck a little bit, but GPPs for the price, I'm going to still consider it.
Yeah, I could definitely see him in GPPs. Again, obviously, we're not talking cash, but I just have a little hesitation with him just because, like you said, the Rockies now have seen him a lot. And you have Dahl in there now, who kind of adds a little bit offensive punch for them. So, I don't know. For me, I'm staying away. It's a little bit too risky.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. I mean, obviously the cores is going to be a big factor for him. And on the other side, you're looking at Gray. He's a guy who, I mean, has been kind of very up and down this season. Has actually pitched relatively well against the Dodgers, especially in the strikeout department. But he's probably the one I'm staying away the most from.
Absolutely. But if you do play him, you will get low ownership.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think to either of these guys, I mean, obviously Maeda probably going to be a little bit more, but I still think it's going to be below 10%.
Maybe even under 5. I don't think there's too many people who will want to roster either of these guys.
I don't know. I mean, the logs for Maeda might push it up a little bit. I mean, you look at what he's done against Colorado, I mean, averaging over 20 DK points. It might push it up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. To me, though, it doesn't make much sense just to go off game logs.
Yeah. No, I know, me either, but I'm just saying there are people that
the
do
masses,
that.
right?
Yeah. Reds and Angels next year. Matt Schumacher versus Dan Straley. Matt Schumacher is a guy who's pitched relatively well at home this year. 7,200 on DraftKings, coming off really two strong starts against two good offenses at Toronto and home against Seattle. I don't mind him here against this Reds offense and against right-handed pitching in that ballpark. I think he's actually an okay arm to target tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he might be one of my top SP2s for the slate just because he is priced really nicely. And you look at the Cincinnati offense, and they can really have a lot of down nights. And like you said, you look at Shoemaker, and he's really looked good over his last two starts. So you kind of want to ride the hot stretch right now.
Yeah, definitely. We saw that stretch earlier on in the year, and I think if there is kind of a cheaper arm on FanDuel, he's the one I might be taking a shot with at 8,700. I think both sites he's reasonably priced, but obviously more so on DraftKings, and more so as kind of an SP2.
Yeah, absolutely. For FanDuel, I don't think I could play him at that price. I know it's still pretty reasonable, but it's just something that I think it's a little bit too high.
Yeah. And on the other side, I mean, I feel like Dan Straley is, will have a solid start, but for 9,100 on DraftKings, I can't really see playing him. And, on FanDuel, I don't think he gets a win. 7,300, I think is just kind of a fade there for me.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you. I think Straley will have a good outing, and I kind of like him, but it's just a tough thing. His price on DraftKings is a little high, but it is what it is. If you want to be really contrarian and be your SP1 on cash games, I can kind of see using Straley just to save a lot of salary.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the thing. The price really kind of factors into it. It would almost be like you had to use him as an SP1. I just never feel comfortable doing that, even against the Angels offense, even in a friendly ballpark. But it'd definitely be kind of a contrarian move, as you pointed out.
Absolutely. I've never rostered Dan Straley, but this is the one night that I've actually considered doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad spot for him, and he's actually been pitching relatively well. So,
yeah, it took me, 5 months to finally agree to play him.
Yeah, hey, sometimes we gotta take that plunge.
Absolutely, it's scary though.
That's gonna wrap things up. Yeah, no, it definitely is. That's gonna wrap things up with the pitcher nailed down. Be sure to check out the fantasycafe.com for our great tools and content.